Howdy, howdy.
Hi, Pickle.
Hi, Tepper. Welcome on in to the pre-show before the free show. Just chomping at the bits over there. How are you, bud?
You know, feeling good, feeling tall.
Yeah, that's a chair thing. I didn't adjust the camera.
Mike Craven's here. Hi, Mike Craven.
Hello, guys.
We were discussing.
Howdy.
Guys is a gender neutral.
Right.
I'm
trying to get away from it though.
Oh, okay.
I am.
Y'all. That's why. That is another reason why y'all is such an impressive and operative
The
word.
best way to go.
It really is.
How are y'all doing?
Good.
Folks.
Folks is good.
I really like folks. I've been leaning on folks. Yeah.
I hit that a lot. That's a Lano
okay,
coming
do
out.
y'all use the L?
Folks.
No.
Because I say folks.
Hey,
folks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, folks.
No, there is
Well,
hardcore
I don't-
no L in that word.
Right.
I don't know if
coming
I've
out of
ever
my
noticed.
mouth.
I think I have like half an L in there. I'm like, folks. I'm not
What
like
were you getting on to me about the other day that I was saying wrong?
Was it pin or pen?
Yeah.
Pin.
It's all just
like
a
you put a
pin.
pin on that, or you're gonna pen. Write with a pen.
You can't tell when my mom says words. She'll say whale and whale, like for well.
Whale.
or like Dale and Dale, like my dad works at Dell, but you would think he works at Dale.
Dale.
Because we're from Liberty Hill.
Okay.
My mom says worsh. And worsh clothes.
My father-in-law says
Trish.
worsh. Okay, so this is a real roundabout story, and I don't have permission to tell it, so here we go. We're owned. If you guys don't know this, maybe do people know who we're owned by?
No.
I don't think so.
I don't think so. So we're a subsidiary of McLean Group. Like
Yeah.
our Drayton McLean III is always rolling through here. He's like our big boss. He's like Adam's boss basically. But anyway, so every once a quarter, once every 2 quarters, something like that, they'll have a big McLean Group meeting where all of the things that they invest in, they come and they give a report and stuff like that. And the McLean Group is they have a lot of different things. We're a weird part of their group.
If you go into their
organization.
logistics office, it's amazing because there's so many different
Oh, yeah.
things, like food products and bath products, and then like a random football from us. It's
There's
wild.
Classic foods, and there's all these things. Anyway, so I got invited one time to go to this meeting, and there was a gentleman there, and he's in charge of McLean Ranch. They have a ranch there, and which I think people who have a lot of money have ranches.
Yeah.
Seems like a cool thing to do. You know anything about that?
Yeah, it's a good investment. We have a big one.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Anyway, so and this is a country guy. I wish I could remember his name, but he's just in charge of the cattle and stuff like that. He's in charge of cattle, and he gets up there and he's talking about how the heads of cattle and that we got this, we got that. He goes, we got to go make sure we take care of these caves and stuff like that. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, what? I didn't know they had caves on there.
Caves on the ranch.
Like, are they going spelunking? Like, what are they doing? And then finally it became apparent that he was saying the word calves. CALVES.
Right.
Baby cows.
But, baby cows. But I was hearing it as like,
Caves.
oh, yeah, we'll go,
Work on the caves.
we're going to go hiking in the caves.
Oh, yeah, you got any extra headlamps?
Exactly,
Like I'm there.
Exactly right. That was what I was like. I was sitting there, and I'm the least important person in this meeting by a factor of 20. And so I'm just getting to sit there and listen, and I'm just trying to. It's like one of those puzzles trying to figure it out.
Right,
Like, do they have caves on their ranch? Like, what a weird.
Well, that's what Mallory, when Aaron came in to do the Mailbag Friday with us 2 weeks ago or whatever that was, Mallory, someone had commented about bull poker.
Bull poker.
Yeah, you sit in a rodeo arena and like the bull's released.
Right,
and
like the clowns do it.
Oh,
Yeah.
Right.
got it.
Anyway, but she kept saying bull poker, and so
Bowl poker?
bowl.
Oh.
And so Aaron's thinking, like bowling.
Yeah.
I'm thinking like bowl games, and we're going, Mallory, what? And she's like, bowl, like in a rodeo, a bowl. And I was like, no, a bowl's what you eat out of, Mallory. It's a
Yeah.
bowl.
You want to hear a funny story about that episode?
What?
I walked in here at like 12:30.
Oh, yeah.
And I was over there hanging out with Ish at my desk or whatever. I'm like, why is it so loud in here today?
Oh, buddy.
And then I
didn't know that there was a
And
hurricane
then the
in here.
supernova walked by.
No, and then I heard her, it was like, oh, Hardigan's here.
Yes, that's a real easy
Like,
tell of
right.
that's the volume does
Right.
increase whenever she's here.
Yeah.
Like,
Excitable.
you think me and Pickle are loud. That's
Right.
that's a different kind.
We were talking about that. Like, I always feel like I'm like, like super positive, bright personality. And then I get around, I get around Aaron and I feel like I'm a mortar. Like I'm just walking around like, hi guys, you know?
You feel like Will.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
feel
just
like Will.
quiet. Her husband.
You feel like Will. That is a man.
Opposites attract, man.
Opposites attract in
sorry.
a real way.
I feel like I
if
can
you've
make
ever-
that joke because they both like me.
If you've
Yeah,
ever
exactly.
met, if you've ever met
No,
Will,
and they'll be the first to admit that
oh my
too.
gosh,
Like that's
if
the
you've
good thing
ever
about
met
it.
Will, I don't like you're low key.
right.
He makes you look like a
Right.
psychopath.
talkative.
You are very talk. He would never sit in this chair and do the segment.
Right.
Never.
Right.
Not once. We're gonna get Will to get him to do a segment.
Right.
I
at some
thought,
point.
did we not get him on a movie review one time, or were we going to?
I think we were
I don't
going to,
know.
and I think
he
begged
escaped.
off.
Yeah,
He's pretty good at that.
we got to get there.
He's skilled. He's very skilled.
Yeah, the Irish goodbyes with Will.
Oh yeah. yeah. If you catch him walking out the door, he might give you like a one of those. But other than that,
You think he's coming back and he just
He just does it.
he's like 1 second.
like he's not walking a tab or anything like
Right.
that. To be clear, like he's
Right.
not doing anything like in that sort of way. But he's just like, oh, guess I'm gonna leave now. As far as Erin Hardigan, whenever she leaves a room, it is it's
She
hugs,
says she's gonna leave 75 times
and
and
then it's
then doesn't
hugs for
leave.
everybody, and then she wants to make sure you got a hug. All right, the next. Just slam. Hit the air sign. Yes, y'all. From the Dave Campbell's Texas Football Mothership here in beautiful Lewisville, Texas, it's Texas Football Today, a show online. My name's Greg Tepper. I'm the managing editor of Dave Campbell's Texas Football magazine, TexasFootball.com, corresponding website. Thank you for spending part of your day with us, whether you're watching us live on TexasFootball.com, on Facebook, on YouTube, or on Twitch, or listen to us on the podcast.
Twitter.
Oh, Twitter. Are we on anything else?
No.
We're like blasting out to space, too?
Yeah, you can't escape us.
Or listen to us on the podcast, which you can subscribe to on the podcast vendor of your choice. As soon as we can implant this in your head, we will. Either way, thank you for doing your part to support your local mediocre internet show. I'm sitting over there at the helm today, making us sound good. She's the Duchess of the Dorks. She's Ashley Pickle.
Howdy, fellas.
Hello. She said fellas plural because sitting to my right is the college football insider for Dave Campbell's Texas Football. We're joined by Mike Craven. Michael, it's good to see you.
How's everybody doing?
We're great. We already did this in the pre-show. This is all for show. We're just we're frauds. We're frauds. Today is Tuesday, January 25th, 2022. 303 days till Thanksgiving. Happy birthday, rather, to Alicia Keys.
Oh, nice.
Oh, wow.
She's 41 today. Do you know who she's married to?
No.
Swiss Beats.
Really?
Yes, I
Man.
found that out when I was looking
Wild.
on her Wikipedia page.
I love Alicia Keys. Like, there's not many more talented. I
Oh,
saw her live
yeah.
one time.
Holy
Tremendous.
cow.
Oh, man.
Tremendous.
You know what it is? I think I've figured out. If you can play piano and sing, I think I'm into you.
Yep.
Yeah,
Like-
110%.
Like Nora Jones.
Oh, yeah.
DFW's
The
on.
queen.
I'm like, you're like if you can. I guess there's like such a like to get like mainstream popular on piano and singing. You have to be so far above
Excellent.
everyone else.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
John Legend's kind of the same way. You know,
Elton
think-
John.
Elton John. You know,
to
Billy
be
Joel.
able
It's like
to
holy cow.
focus like solely on your voice and just like naturally be so good at the piano, I think that's what the most impressive
Yeah.
part of that is.
Andrew WK plays the keyboard
Word.
and also sings. Anyway,
guitar.
Episode, yeah, if you can play the guitar, I think I'm into you.
Yeah.
As well. Episode 19. I didn't update that. On today's show, my friends, we are going to talk. It's UTEP Day. We're going to talk about those minors who I would say exceeded all of our expectations.
Did we ever shout out Barrick Neely for sending us all the UTEP swag?
We'll do it right now. Shout out Barrick Neely for sending us all that UTEP swag. So we are. We'll talk about UTEP, the good, the bad, the ugly, and all the things that happened with the minors in a pretty memorable 2021 season. In the back half of the show, we're going to do some inside the numbers. We're going to crunch the numbers on the most improved
Nerd.
Texas high school football offenses across the state of Texas. The numbers might surprise you. That's a tease. It's a
Dun, dun, dun.
horizontal tease. It's coming up here at the back half of the program.
You're a professional.
Do we have first four through the door? Barely.
We sure do. It was Tony Blaylock, Aaron Arbuckle, Rob Hadaway, and Coach Terry Crawford. Welcome in, fellas.
Welcome in, friends. All right. Craven's here because we're going to talk some UTEP football.
Picks up.
How many times did you make it out to El Paso? Just one?
Just once.
Just for the UTSA game?
For the UTSA game. Ironically, the only game they lost at home this year. 5-1 at home.
So you're the
Miners.
bad luck.
So it's,
Well, Maybe UTSA is the bad luck.
Yeah.
Which I guess I'm
Ooh,
a part
the
of.
bad luck walking through the door. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So let's first and foremost take a grand look at things at UTEP, because I think coming into the year, and it's easy to say this because they've just been one of the more moribund programs, arguably the most moribund program in Texas college football, in the FBS ranks at least. To go and to do that, what they were able to do, and to make a bowl, to finish 6-7 was the final tally. To finish 6-7.
No, 7-6. Sorry.
7-6. Finish 7-6. I don't think there's any other way to describe it besides pretty remarkable. We can certainly argue with who they beat, and the schedule was certainly favorable. But when you're UTEP, I feel like you're not asking how, you're asking how many.
Yeah, I mean, we have to remember this is a program that won 0 games in 2017, 1 game in 2018, 1 game in 2019, 3 games in 2020. So they had won 5 games in the last 4 years entering this year. And to start out 6-1 was tremendous. They beat the teams they were supposed to beat. Mm-hmm. And that's what you can do at UTEP, right? We shouldn't put UTEP. It's almost like Rice when we're talking about like there are expectations, and you have to measure these teams against their expectations. And if you're UTEP, going to a bowl game is tremendous. Like if they went to a bowl game next year, for example, it would only be the second time since the 50s they've gone to consecutive bowl games.
Wow.
So this is the type of program we're talking about. Dana Dimmels had to build this from the absolute ground up. And I was excited for, the guys who stuck through those years, right? If you were there at 18, 19, 2020, because we got to remember the pandemic hit everybody, but it hit UTEP the most because nobody wanted to go to El Paso. The city kind of shut down. And so they only got to play 8 games last year. So to sit through those kind of one-win seasons, a season that was pretty much taken away from you, and then to turn around and reach a bowl game, it had to be a cool year to be a minor.
Well, and it also it speaks to Dana Dimmel and credit to, and I can't believe I'm saying this at this point, but like credit to the UTEP brass for sticking with him, because I know we were having the conversations of like, well, you just got to move on, you got to get out there, and I think that they looked at him and said, all right, we trust that you're building something. It's going to take a minute to get there. And sure enough, it came out of the slow cooker, and it was good to go, and one of the best years in recent program history.
It's funny. So people who remember Dana Dimmel's story, he was at Houston for a couple of years, and they got rid of him pretty quickly. He had a pretty
2 years maybe?
Yeah, he finally felt like he was getting that turnaround, and he got fired. When he got interviewed for the UTEP job, he told Jim Center, the AD there, I don't want to hear from you for 4 years.
Yeah.
Like if I'm going to take this job, I need 4 years before anybody's critiquing me about on-field product.
That's smart.
And this was year 3, right? Or no,
year 4.
Year 4. So this was the year to kind of rubber to road, and he did exactly what he was going to do, or said he was going to do. He's from that Bill Snyder tree. He's watched, maybe the best program builder in college football over the last 10, 15, 20 years. And so he did some of the same things. A lot of those best players were JUCO guys who came in and kind of gave them instant impact. And so, yeah, a really good year for UTEP, and a program who trusted their coach and let him do it the right way, and we're starting to see the results. I think that's something that maybe more colleges could take into account, because everybody wants to be like Oklahoma, where you just drop in a coach and win 10 games, and there's 10 programs you can do that at. UTEP's clearly not one of them. So credit to them for kind of doing it the right way, the patient way, and I think it will turn into more years like this.
All right, let's talk about the offense. Let's hand out a grade on the offensive side for the Miners. And remember, this was the side of the ball, especially recently, that had really been stuck in the mud. They could not figure anything out offensively. I would say a breakout year for them. You give them a B-.
I do, and again, we're grading this compared to their competition and their level, right? Yeah. Gavin Hardison, their quarterback, broke a record with 3,200 passing yards. Jacob Cowing was excellent, maybe the best wide receiver in the state, 69 catches for 1,354, 7 touchdowns. That's 19.62 yards per catch, and so really good. They were kind of boom or bust. That was the problem with their offense. They were either scoring on like 3-4 play drives with big plays, or they were going 3 and out. There wasn't a lot there in the middle, and that was because of the run offense. The reason I didn't give them an A is because they only averaged 3.8 yards per rush. And so They were in a lot of third and longs. They had to punt a lot. So if Cowing, Justin Garrett, if those guys weren't making big plays early, it ended up being a punt. They're going to have to figure out a way to be more consistent because that'll help them on third down, which they were only 31.4% on third down conversions. It'll help them in the red zone where they kicked as many field goals as they scored touchdowns.
Well, and what's so funny is that passing was not what we expected Dana Dimmel to come in and install. He was a Bill Snyder guy, basically. We expected them to run the ball. And where you take a look at where they had recruited well, where they had kind of won their recruiting battles had been at running back, right? Ronald Awatt and Deion Hankins and Q Wadley. Those guys, to get them in there was – and so that's what made it all the more – I think exciting is the fact that you did have a guy in Jacob Cowing, or Gavin Harrison rather, who stepped up, and a guy in Jacob Cowing who stepped up to form a certified, full-on, dangerous passing offense for the first time in forever. I mean, first time in a long, long time.
Right. It looked like a modern offense.
Exactly right. Yeah,
and that's not something that maybe we would have expected from UTEP. Some of that's recruiting, and then they were just kind of injured at running back. Like the two guys you mentioned there with Awatt and Hankins, like. I think they only played 4 games together. One of them was kind of always dinged up. Hankins early in the season, Awatt towards the end of the season. So they just never got consistent running game. And some of that's the offensive line too, right? They allowed a decent amount of sacks. Hardison had to get the ball out quickly a lot of times. So offensive line, in my opinion, is the hardest place to recruit for schools like UTEP.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of wide receivers in the world. There's even a lot of quarterbacks in the world with the way 7-on-7 has blown up and stuff like that. But there's only so many 300-pound men who can move around and bully people. Like, there's just not that many.
Right.
And UTEP's low enough on the totem pole to where that doesn't trickle down to them as much. So if they can improve there, I think they have a really good shot of kind of repeating the results in 2022.
B- for the offense. Let's move over to the defense. And I'm very interested in your grade here because I think that there were certainly, the defense was better in 2020 than the offense was, but I would even say that they took a pretty clear step forward in 2021. And in a lot of ways, some of those games, we talked about the games that they won, the games, you win the games you're supposed to. A lot of them came on the backs of the defense because, there were a couple games there where the offense kind of no-showed and the defense had to stand up. So I'm interested in what you thought of their defense.
Yeah, I mean, in their 7 wins, they gave up 15.5 points a game.
Yeah.
In their 6 losses, they gave up 36.5. Right? So, I mean, it was a 21-point swing. And so that defense was super important. The offense, as we talked about, just wasn't consistent enough to score a lot of points. They could score some quick points and have some big plays, but they only averaged 25 points a game. So it was a lot up to this defense. And I thought they played really well, especially in the front 7. Breon Hayward, Tyrese Knight, they both end up with over 100 tackles. They have a couple guys on the defensive line that combined for about 15 sacks there, together. So they were pretty good defensively. The back half struggled a little bit as the competition got better. Some wide receivers like Zachary Franklin at UTSA had a big day and stuff like that. They just didn't have that number 1 corner. But the front 7 was really good, and when they were supposed to beat teams, right, when they were better than opponents, that defense showed up. But there were some games, against Boise State, against UTSA, where they gave up a pretty decent amount of points. And that's just a talent gap that probably needs a year or two more of recruiting to catch up on.
Well, and what's so interesting to me is when we talk about a defense that was pretty good, normally you look at the hallmarks like, okay, well, we're going to force a lot of turnovers. They didn't. They were not. They were not big play oriented. They were just pretty good. They were second in Conference USA in opponents' third down conversions. They were, better than UTSA, right? Who won the conference at that. And so what I think is so impressive about them is they won just by being solid across the board. The problem is there were some times where they just weren't, and they just got out-talented, and that's when you needed those big splash plays, which just kind of never came along.
Yep.
That's kind of the interesting thing about their defense this year. All right. Let's hand out an MVP award. Who was the most valuable player on the 2021 UTEP Miners?
I mean, I think it's got to be Jacob Cowing.
I think I would be very mad if you didn't pick him.
I mean, honestly, I think he did win our wide receiver of the year after the year. I mean, to average over almost 20 yards a catch for a team that lacked big plays, like we just talked about they lacked big plays defensively. They lacked them offensively as well. If you take Jacob Cowing away, I think they only have 10 plays over 50 yards on the whole season.
He was up there in the national ranks.
Yeah, I mean, he's an excellent wide receiver. It stinks for them that he entered the transfer portal and is going to go to Arizona. But that year that he had last year at UTEP is like an all-timer.
And he's an Arizona guy.
Yep.
Yeah, he's from that area,
Maricopa.
so kind of going home. I mean, you look at the numbers. So he had 105 yards per game receiving. That is better than Jamison Williams. That is better than Garrett Wilson. That's better. Remember last time you were here, we were talking about Tank Dell at Houston.
Yep.
Considerably better than Tank Dell. I mean, he was their big John Mechie, considerably better than a lot of these guys, numbers wise. He was their big play offense. Like if they were going to hit a big play, it was going to be through him, and he stepped up in a big way.
I could make an argument that the Cowing Garrett wide receiver duo was the best 1-2 wide receiver duo in the state.
Yeah, I think that's
because like at Texas is Xavier Worthy and no one else. Houston, Tank Dell had 58 more catches than anybody else on the roster. Right there was SMU had a pretty decent stable of receivers. Quentin Johnson by himself at TCU. Right, there's a lot of single great wide receivers around the state.
Like who's the second best at Tech? Right, and
right.
Chakama and
Miles Price.
Yeah,
and so like SMU I think is the only place that maybe had a stable of guys that were better. But in terms of just 1-2 punch, the best wide receiver duo in the state was at UTEP. I find that to be amazing.
That's pretty
wild.
Amazing. All right, so now what have you done for me lately? They haven't won a game in months.
That's true.
Let's talk about 2022 because, you win. Good job. You kind of exceeded everyone's expectations. I think now there's going to be an expectation to maintain this. I do wonder, though, about some of the losses that they're going to have, and are they going to be able to replicate that, especially what figures to be a more difficult schedule, too.
Right. They only have 2 winnable games out of conference, where last year they were going to go 3-1 with that Boise State loss. This year they're going to play Oklahoma and Boise State out of conference. So they're going to need a better Conference USA record. They're going to need to do better on the road. They were only 2-5 on the road. So they're going to have to improve. I think one of those was in New Mexico, right? So, like, they're going to have to do better when they travel. And the thing we don't ever talk about with UTEP is, like, everywhere they travel in conference is a long trip.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Like, nothing's a short trip.
And
for
in a
them,
different
right?
time zone.
Like and they're only 1 in 22 all time in the Eastern time zone.
That was shocking to
Right.
me.
And so they're going to have to get better at that. But, you look at it this year, they went 4-4 in Conference USA, and 2 of those losses were on the road by 3 points. They lost FAU by 3 points on the road, or FIU 3 points on the road, and they lost to 3 points to North Texas on the road. So, they're right there. I mean, they were very close to having a 9-3 regular season. So if they can replace Cowing, and you're not going to do that with one guy, they're going to need to get better running the football and build more balance. And the way that Hardison can improve is by being less boom or bust. I think he only had like a 53% completion, percentage next year. So I bet they sure that up a little bit. If the defense can be good as well and they can go 2-2 out of conference, I think they got a chance to win 4 conference games and get to 6-6. And I think if you're UTEP, that's where the expectation has to be. The realistic expectation is we reach a bowl game, and anything on top of that is gravy. And like I said earlier, if they reach a bowl game again in 2022, that'll only be the second time since the 50s where they've gone consecutive bowl games back-to-back. So that would be a huge accomplishment for Dimel's crew.
The other thing, and this is a bigger conversation, we got all offseason to talk about it, but obviously with conference realignment coming down the pike, they are in a very tough spot. They're kind of getting left behind there in Conference USA. They're going to be joined by teams like Sam Houston, which we're excited about, but then also like New Mexico State, rivalry game during the conference, Jacksonville State, Liberty. It is a weird look there in Conference USA, but I think that there is a glass half full opportunity there where you can say, all right, why can't you go out there and rise to the top, the top echelon of this new look Conference USA? Is it a weaker conference? Undoubtedly.
Right.
But why can't you go out there and become what Boise State was in the Mountain West for so many years, where they're just out there dominating?
Winning speaks to recruits.
Yeah, exactly right.
And it's, there are some things working for El Paso. Like, you are kind of on an island by yourself, and that can be interesting. But the Sun Bowl is tremendous. Like, there's not a better stadium in the state. And if you add Juarez there, they got about 2 million people in that area to draw upon for advertising money, for fans in the stadiums. And, like, when there's fans at the Sun Bowl, like, it's a great atmosphere. And so if they really hit the JUCOs in West Texas and New Mexico, Arizona, those type of things. And like we talked about with Dimmel and his Bill Snyder connection, he knows how to recruit JUCO. I do think you're right. I think UTEP can kind of become like, what Louisiana or Appalachian State did in the Sun Belt, where you're not going to compete for anything huge, but you can win conference championships and be an 8 to 10 win team on a regular basis, go to bowl games. And if you look throughout UTEP football history, that would be a tremendous 5, 10, 15-year run.
That really would.
And you will be well fed.
That
Let
too.
me speak from personal experience.
I just remember I've told the story before, but I did a story for the magazine about El Paso and went out there when Sean Kugler was there, and he told me he just said straight up, like, our number one, like, the biggest task for us is just getting kids here. If we get kids here for a visit, they'll look around and be like, oh, this place is actually pretty rad. Like, It's pretty great.
Yep.
But that's the biggest trouble. The biggest trouble is just convincing people to go out there. But, good things ahead. And if you win, then certainly people want to go play for a winner. One of our winners here, Mike Craven. Follow him on Twitter
done.
at Craven Mike.
Well
and
done.
see his fine work at TexasFootball.com/recruiting. And you guys, Republic of Football.
Republic of Football got Dana Holgerson on. It'll be out tomorrow afternoon. So check your Spotify or anywhere that you listen. You can clearly tell I listen to things on Spotify because I know.
You can check Spotify and then whatever else there is.
Whatever else, you nerds.
Yeah,
exactly.
I'm anti-technology. I'm a Luddite.
Thanks for stopping by, dude.
All right.
We're Texas Football Today. We're here every weekday at noon on TexasFootball.com, talking football in the Lone Star State. You can follow us on Twitter at DCTF, like us on Facebook, Facebook.com/Dave Campbell's. Follow us on Instagram, Instagram.com/Dave Campbell's, and of course, see us at TexasFootball.com. TexasFootball.com is where you can find complete coverage of high school football, college football, and recruiting all across the Lone Star State. Hope you'll consider becoming a Dave Campbell's Texas Football Insider at TexasFootball.com/subscribe. We'll send you this recruiting magazine. We will also be nice to you.
Yeah.
And we may have some fun things coming down the pike.
Dun dun dun.
All right. Pickle.
It's Math Tuesday.
That's terrible branding. Nobody's going to want to do that. Nobody's going to want to click on a video
I
that
promise.
says Math Tuesday.
No, when you were gone, that's what we kept saying, that we do math on Tuesdays, and all the nerd crew flocked together, and that was like our most watched show every week. Math Tuesday.
All right, I guess welcome to Math Tuesday here on Texas Football Today. We're going to go inside the numbers. We're going to talk a little bit about offense. Last week we talked about teams that were the most improved teams in Texas high school football. We want to drill down a little bit deeper. And I want to start, there's a piece up on TexasFootball.com that I wrote. And not to brag, but
whatever.
But I want to start with this. Mallory and I went back and watched this. Mallory and I did a segment back in July about how the offenses were impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020. Offense took a pretty serious hit back there. They went from they basically dropped about a full 1.5 per game.
If you're not a run-heavy team, that doesn't surprise me at all. How are you supposed to build chemistry?
Across the entire state is pretty huge. It's a pretty seismic shock there. And one of the things that we were pretty careful about in that clip was we wanted to make sure that we weren't saying it was definitely from the COVID-19 pandemic because we didn't know.
Right.
I think it's fair to say now that it's from the COVID-19 pandemic.
After looking at the numbers for this year?
Back, because we saw a return to form from there. For example, in 2020, there were 1,222 UIL Texas high school football teams that played in both 2020 and 2021 because there were a few that didn't play in 2020, etc.
Right.
In 2020, they averaged 26.7 points per game.
Okay.
In 2021, it was to 28.4. Okay, scoring was up 6%. Yeah. That across an entire state like that is
with that
massive.
Many schools to take a poll from.
With that data group to go 6% more is pretty shocking. So offense was back in 2021. That's for darn sure. It's not just, and what I'm talking about, I'm not just talking about the Rockwall and Rockwall Heaths, right? I'm not talking about those big high-flying offensive games. I'm talking about the average game.
Right.
The average game just had about two more points in it, which across the entire state, across all those games, is pretty massive. Now let's take a look at the teams that made the biggest leap, okay? And if you take a look at the numbers, what I think is most interesting is six-man football kind of dominates this. They dominate them. In fact, I believe it is 10 of the top 25 most improved offenses in the state were six-man teams. Whiteface, in fact, 4 of the top 5, Whiteface, Mount Calm, Trent, Cranfill's Gap, all jumped by more than 26 points per game.
Wow.
Whiteface improved by 31 points per game. Okay, they went from 22.3 points per game, which is, by six-man standards,
really low,
pretty paltry, to 53.3,
which is contending in
pretty
basically
good.
Any game.
Pretty good, exactly right. As far as 11-man is concerned, when you get to 11-man, Tioga was the clear favorite here.
Oh, Chad Rogers.
Chad Rogers, in his first year there, we sat here, we talked about why did he leave Denison to go to Tioga? Well, obviously he is building something there. They increased their scoring average by 26 points a game.
Wow.
That's shocking. To go from 10 points a game to 36 is pretty impressive. Roscoe is the same way. And I think a lot of that comes back to having, and by the way, with some of these teams, Whiteface most especially, and then a team like Roscoe, you can pretty clearly point to 1 or 2 youngsters who joined. Okay,
right.
With Whiteface, they had a pair of freshmen in Ethan Kaufman and Jeremiah Rendon, who really stepped up. 2 freshmen. And Roscoe is Jax Watts, the sophomore quarterback, who really sparked that offense there for the Plowboys. They averaged more than 25 more points per game in 2021 than they did in 2020. As far as if you narrow this down only to 11-man teams, the top 5 would be Tioga, Roscoe, Levia, who Levia is interesting. They were really hit hard by the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020.
They didn't play all their games.
They didn't play all their games, but they did improve by 25 points a game. Toller and Shamrock were there. As far as 6A is concerned, the biggest jump was 6A was Odessa. The Broncos, the Bronchos, went from 7 points a game to 31 points per game. Awfully impressive there from there. In 5A, it was Fort Worth Wyatt. In 4A, it was Rockport Fulton. Okay. In 3A, it was Tulia. And then at 2A, it was Tioga. What I think is interesting, if you take a look at the 11-man ranks, the top 5 are all 2A teams. Tioga, Roscoe, Levia, Toller, and Shamrock. And what I think that speaks to is when you get down to those lower levels, and we see it in the state championship games, we see it deep in the playoffs, if you have that one guy, if you can have one extra guy, it makes that much more of an impact at the 2A level. I found that to be particularly interesting. If you are interested on the other end of the spectrum, the teams that took the biggest dip were Brooksmith, Sherilyn Pioneer, Hamlin, Petersburg, and Chillicothe.
R.I.P.
Yeah.
To ELM
the Eddie Lee Marburger impact was real. Pioneer was down 32 points a game this year.
I mean,
pretty shocking.
Wow.
Other ones that I think are a little bit interesting, we talked about Little Cypress, Mauriceville. They were up by 21 points a game. Buda Johnson was another team that made a big leap. Groover
really?
As well. Yeah, Buda Johnson went from 21.2 points per game to 43.5 points per game.
Oh, I'm thinking of Buda Hayes. I was like, they made it to a state semifinal last week.
Team.
I was like, how?
You're thinking of the other Buda team. And so, I found this to be a little bit interesting. And it looks like all offenses across the state, for the most part, like as a whole, offense did take more of a center stage in Texas high school football in 2021. But there were these other teams that really made that big leap. And again, I think a lot of it comes down to having youngsters who are jumping into starring roles for these offenses and doing big things. Obviously coaching matters as well. That's one thing that I found particularly interesting here was these teams were taking big leaps. Oh, I'm sorry, I should put some respect on their name. San Antonio McCollum also made a big leap. They went from 1.9 points per game in 2020 to 26 points a game. That's pretty impressive.
That's Math Tuesday for you.
Math Tuesday, right there. They were tied with Wyatt for top in 5A. So there you go. You can find the piece on TexasFootball.com. I've got the top 25 most improved UIL Texas high school football offenses. I'm working on a piece for the defenses here, which, surprise, surprise, some of these teams have a little crossover on some of these. I was putting that together today. But you will have to wait until next Math Tuesday for us to talk about the most improved UIL Texas high school football defenses.
That's a legitimate tease right there.
That's a vertical tease. Now we go over to Ashley Pickle for America's second favorite segment, Final Thoughts. You got to have a final thought.
Yeah, no, I do. I got to find it, though. Where did it go? Oh, going back to the pre-show topic of you liking the terms y'all and folks.
Yeah.
It has been stated, I'll leave him anonymous so that you don't yell at him, that you also, if you like those two, you have to hop on the yeet train.
Nope, sure don't.
I think you do.
Sure
I think
don't.
that is a fantastic point, viewer.
Yeet?
Who I will not mention. Yeet.
Why? Like what?
Sometimes you
What-
just feel the need to yell out a yeet.
Okay, you are taking two very different circumstances and trying to like shoehorn in a word you like.
Mm-hmm.
Just that doesn't have anything to do. Like if you were going to say another word for a collective, like another gender neutral collective word,
Right.
yeet is not one of those.
No, but I think it's kind of along those same. That's a pretty country term. Like folks and y'all are only said by people like you don't hear people in New York saying those.
I don't think that's true.
Yeah.
The president says folks all the time. And he's from Delaware.
That might be a trying to connect with the South type of thing. I don't hear anyone like I've got a lot of relatives from up north,
folks,
and I don't think
no. Now y'all, I agree with.
y'all. Okay.
Y'all, I agree with. Y'all feels relatively southern. I think if you were to ask people where is the word y'all most, like where's the heat map for that, it's going to be southern. I think folks is pretty universal.
I'm wondering.
It's not like you know, like Pittsburgh, they'll say yins and stuff like that, but they're weird.
I think folks is also more of an older generation. Like I think that's a word that's not being kept around.
Well,
a
it should
whole
be.
ton.
It's a good word.
I do. I agree. I say it a lot.
Yeah.
But I think it's a southern thing.
I don't know.
I don't think any
think
young
so.
people up north are saying folks.
If you're a young person up north, let us know if you say the word folks.
Yeah.
That's going to do it for us. Thanks for spending a little bit of your day with us. Follow us on Twitter at DCTF. Like us on Facebook, facebook.com/Dave Campbell's. Follow us on Instagram, instagram.com/Dave Campbell's. And, of course, see us at texasfootball.com. Thanks again to Mike Craven, our college football insider, for being our guest. For Ashley Pickle, I'm Greg Tepper. Vince Young, please come get your Player of the Year trophy. We'll see you tomorrow for This Week in Recruiting. Greg Powers is here on Texas Football Today.